A wealthy Korean millionaire met a poor maid in the most unlikely place, and what happened next changed both their lives forever. This isn't just a story about wealth and poverty colliding. It's about love conquering all, second chances, and breaking barriers. Before we begin, comment below and tell us where you're watching from, because this is one love story you'll never forget. Jae-Min Lee was a name that carried weight in Seoul's elite circles. Born into privilege, he inherited his father's sprawling conglomerate, a legacy of skyscrapers, luxury hotels, and exclusive resorts spread across Asia, with tailored suits, a fleet of black cars, and headlines chronicling his every move. He was the embodiment of the word untouchable. To the world, he was powerful and flawless. To those who truly knew him, though there were very few, he was cold, aloof, and burdened by responsibilities he never chose. Eun-Ji Park, on the other hand, had never known a day of ease. At 23, she worked as a maid in one of Jae's grandest hotels, scrubbing marble floors and polishing chandeliers she could never afford to look at, let alone own. Her hands were rough from detergents, her back often sore, yet her spirit remained unbroken. Life had thrown her into hardship early, her father gone, her mother ill, and her younger brother's schooling resting entirely on her shoulders. Each paycheck mattered, each long shift mattered, every small sacrifice became survival. Their worlds collided on a rainy afternoon. In the marble lobby of the Grand Seoul Palace Hotel, Eun-Ji had been assigned extra duties cleaning after an international investors meeting. With her hair tied back and her uniform slightly too big, she moved silently, collecting empty glasses and discarded papers. She thought herself invisible, as she always did when among the wealthy. But when the elevator doors opened, and Jae-Min himself strode out with his entourage, her path was abruptly blocked. He didn't notice her at first, not until she stumbled, her cleaning bucket slipping from her hands, sending water and soap suds across the gleaming floor. Gasps echoed from nearby staff, and her heart stopped. Her entire month's salary could be gone if she were accused of negligence. She dropped to her knees, frantically mopping the water with her apron, murmuring apologies. "Stop!" The single word froze her. His voice was deep, commanding, and close. When she dared to glance up, her eyes locked with his. For the first time in years, Jae-Min saw something beyond transactions, deals, and expectations. He saw fear, resilience, and pride in the eyes of a maid who refused to let humiliation break her. "You'll scratch the floor with that," he said, his tone sharper than he intended. One of his executives smirked, ready to dismiss her, but Jae-Min raised his hand, silencing them. "Bring her a towel," he ordered. Confused whispers followed, but no one dared question him. Eun-Ji's cheeks flushed, accepted the towel quietly, her trembling hands wiping the floor until it shone again. She muttered, "Thank you," without lifting her gaze. That night, Jae-Min couldn't sleep. Why had he stopped? Why had the look in her eyes stayed with him? He was surrounded by elegance every day, yet it was a maid's humility that had pierced through his indifference. He shook the thought away. He had no time for distractions. Still, her face haunted him like an unfinished sentence. For Eun-Ji, the encounter was terrifying. Rumors spread quickly among the staff. The CEO had spoken to her directly. Some envied her. Others warned her to be careful. The wealthy did not mix with the poor, especially not with hotel maids. "Stay invisible," her supervisor scolded, "and don't ever let this happen again." Eun-Ji nodded obediently, but deep inside, she wondered why the man who owned everything had spared her dignity that day. The next week, fate intervened again. Jae-Min returned to the hotel unexpectedly, demanding a private inspection before a major event. Eun-Ji was cleaning the grand ballroom when he walked in. She froze, her heart pounding, and prayed he wouldn't notice. But of course he did. "You, again," he said, his lips curving slightly, not quite a smile, but close. Her bow was quick, her voice timid. "I'll leave, sir." "No," he said. "Continue." And so she did, polishing the mirrors with trembling hands while he observed the room in silence. Minutes stretched, heavy with unspoken tension. When she finally gathered the courage to leave, his voice stopped her once more. "What's your name?" "Eun-Ji Park," she whispered. For reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted to hear it again. "Eun-Ji," he repeated softly, as if testing the sound of it. That single exchange set in motion a chain of events neither of them could stop. Each accidental meeting carved away layers of prejudice, revealing truths both had long buried. Jae-Min began noticing the quiet strength behind her downcast eyes. Eun-Ji discovered that beneath his arrogance lay a man weighed down by emptiness he could never admit aloud. But Seoul was a city of boundaries. The glittering towers looked down upon the narrow alleyways, and society dictated that people like Eun-Ji and Jae-Min never crossed paths. Gossip would ruin reputations, power could crush the powerless, and every step they took toward each other would come at a cost neither was prepared to pay. Still, the pull between them grew stronger with each passing day, until it could no longer be ignored, and it all began with a moment of spilled water, a fleeting glance, and the unshakable feeling that fate had intervened for a reason. Eun-Ji tried to push the memory aside. She told herself it was just an accident, nothing more. A man like Jae-Min would forget her as quickly as he noticed her, and she could not afford to dwell on a world that didn't belong to her. But despite her best efforts, She found her thoughts straying back to that moment. The way his eyes lingered, the strange softness in his voice when he repeated her name, it unsettled her. For Jae-Min, the distraction grew unbearable. Board meetings felt duller, numbers blurred on the page, and even his father's endless lectures on legacy and power couldn't silence the memory of her bowed figure in that ballroom. He hated it. He was a man trained to control, to suppress. Yet this maid had found a way through his armor. One evening, Jae-Min returned to the hotel unannounced. He claimed it was to oversee the preparations for an upcoming gala, but truthfully, he hoped for another encounter. He walked the halls slowly, his footsteps echoing against marble, and there she was again, kneeling in the corner of the grand corridor, polishing the brass railing until it gleamed. She saw him instantly, her body stiffening. She bowed deeply, murmuring, "Good evening, sir." He paused, studying her. "Do you always work this late?" Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced calmness into her voice. "Yes, sir. The hotel must be perfect for the guests." "Don't you have a family to go home to?" The question startled her. She hesitated before answering. "I do, but my work comes first." For a moment, Jae-Min almost asked more, but stopped himself. He didn't want to care. Yet when she finally lifted her eyes to meet his, the honesty there stripped him of his defenses. The days that followed only deepened the strange connection. He began noticing her presence even when surrounded by dozens of employees. He caught glimpses of her in the gardens, in the laundry rooms, carrying heavy linens with quiet determination. Each time he found himself lingering too long, his heart tugged by something unfamiliar, something dangerously close to longing. Meanwhile, Eun-Ji struggled with whispers among the staff. Some teased her, suggesting she had caught the CEO's attention. Others warned her to stay cautious. "Men like him play with people like us," her friend Soo-min whispered one night as they folded bedsheets. "Don't let him ruin you." Eun-Ji shook her head, insisting nothing would happen. But when she was alone, her chest tightened with confusion. She had seen arrogance in rich men before, yet Jae-Min was different. Behind his cold demeanor, there was a loneliness that mirrored her own. The turning point came during the gala. Eun-Ji had been assigned to serve drinks in the grand ballroom. Weaving through the glittering crowd of Seoul's wealthiest, she felt invisible in her maid's uniform, overshadowed by women in jeweled gowns and men in sharp tuxedos. Then, across the room, she caught sight of him. Jae-Min, tall and commanding, his suit perfectly tailored, surrounded by business partners and dignitaries. Their eyes met for only a second, but it was enough to make her heart race. She quickly looked away, reminding herself she didn't belong there. But Jae-Min saw more than just a maid in that moment. He saw resilience standing in a sea of extravagance, a woman holding her head high, despite the weight of poverty pressing her down. And he felt something shift inside him, something no amount of money or power had ever given him, the desire to truly know someone. Later that night, as Eun-Ji carried an empty tray back to the kitchen, she was stopped by a voice she recognized. Instantly, "You shouldn't be working here this late." She turned, startled to find him standing in the quiet hallway, away from the glittering crowd. "I'm on duty, sir," she stammered. His gaze lingered on her, softer this time. "Do you ever do anything for yourself, Eun-Ji Park?" Her lips parted, but no words came. No one had ever asked her that before. In that moment, the fragile line between their worlds blurred. Silence stretched between them, filled with questions neither dared to ask. And just as quickly, footsteps echoed nearby, breaking the moment. Eun-Ji bowed hastily and slipped away, leaving Jae-Min staring after her, his chest tightening with an unfamiliar ache. That night, Jae-Min returned home to his empty penthouse overlooking the Han River. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but it tasted hollow. The city lights glittered below, but for once, he didn't feel powerful. He felt restless, haunted by the thought of a maid who polished brass railings and carried her burdens with more grace than anyone he had ever met. And Eun-Ji, lying in her small one-room apartment beside her sleeping brother, tried to steady her racing heart. She told herself it was foolish, dangerous even, to think of him. Yet in the stillness of the night, she couldn't help but wonder why fate kept crossing their paths, why the man who had everything seemed unable to look away from a woman who had nothing. The morning after the gala, Eun-Ji tried to bury herself in work, scrubbing, dusting, and carrying linens with mechanical precision. But her mind replayed every detail of the night, the glimmer of chandeliers, the swirl of gowns, and most of all, the quiet question Jae-Min had asked her. "Do you ever do anything for yourself, Eun-Ji Park?" It echoed inside her, stirring a longing she had kept locked away for years. Jae-Min, too, was restless. His father's words from their late-night phone call about legacy, power, and heirs barely registered. He found himself distracted, impatient, and when he glanced at his reflection, he saw not a titan of industry but a man who couldn't stop thinking of a maid's trembling hands and steady eyes. Days later, a sudden storm rolled through Seoul. The rain came down hard, flooding the streets and leaving traffic at a standstill. At the hotel, Eun-Ji's shift ended late, and she was forced to walk home with only a thin umbrella to shield her. The wind turned vicious, snapping her umbrella in half. By the time she reached the bus stop, she was drenched, shivering, and holding her bag tightly to protect the medicine she had bought for her mother. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, the tinted window lowered, and her breath caught. It was him. Jae-Min leaned forward slightly, his gaze narrowing as he took in her soaked state. "Get in," he said firmly. Eun-Ji froze, clutching her bag. "I can't, sir. I'll take the bus. The buses won't run in this weather." His tone softened. "You'll get sick. Please get in." Hesitantly, she slid into the back seat. The warmth enveloped her instantly, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. She sat stiffly, careful not to wet the leather seats. He noticed and, without a word, removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture left her stunned. "You didn't have to. I wanted to," he interrupted, his voice low. For a moment, the powerful CEO looked less like a distant figure and more like a man reaching out, unsure of how to bridge the gap between them. The ride was quiet, save for the sound of rain pelting the windows. Finally, he asked, "Where do you live?" She hesitated before giving him the address of her modest neighborhood. His brows furrowed slightly, but he said nothing as the driver turned toward the narrow streets. When the car stopped in front of her building, a worn-down structure with peeling paint, he looked at her with an intensity that made her heart pound. "This is where you live?" he asked quietly. "Yes, sir." Her voice carried no shame, only honesty. Something in his chest tightened. He watched as she bowed politely, returning his jacket, and stepped out into the rain. For the first time, he felt the crushing weight of the gulf between their lives. That night, Jae-Min couldn't escape the image of her walking into that crumbling building. He lay awake, wondering how someone so full of quiet dignity could endure such hardship. He found himself asking questions he never thought he'd ask. What dreams does she hide? What would her life be if she had been given the same chances as me? The next day, fate tested them again. Eun-Ji arrived at the hotel only to be scolded by her supervisor. "You were seen leaving in the CEO's car. Do you realize what kind of trouble that could bring?" Her cheeks burned. "It wasn't like that. The storm here was just being kind. Kindness from men like him doesn't come without a price," her supervisor sneered. "Stay invisible, Eun-Ji. Don't ruin yourself." The words stung, but she swallowed her pride. She couldn't risk losing her job, not when her family depended on her. Yet, as she dusted the lobby's golden fixtures later that afternoon, she felt his gaze again. Jae-Min stood across the room, speaking with investors, but his eyes flicked toward her just for a second, just enough to make her pulse race later. As she carried fresh linens down the hallway, she turned a corner too quickly and nearly collided with him. Her eyes widened and she stepped back immediately. "I'm sorry, sir," she murmured. His lips curved ever so slightly. "You don't always have to apologize, Eun-Ji." Her breath caught. For a moment, the world outside that corridor ceased to exist, but reality crashed back quickly. Behind him, an elegant woman appeared, tall, poised, draped in designer clothes. She slipped her hand through Jae-Min's arm with a familiarity that made Eun-Ji's chest tighten. "There you are," the woman said sweetly. "Your father is waiting." Jae-Min stiffened slightly but nodded. Before walking away, his eyes lingered on Eun-Ji for a fraction too long. The woman noticed her gaze flicking toward Eun-Ji with thinly veiled disdain. Eun-Ji lowered her head, her heart twisting painfully. In that single glance, she was reminded of the truth. He belonged to a world where she could never set foot, and yet, deep inside, the fragile spark that had ignited between them refused to die. The elegant woman on Jae-Min's arm was Minneseo Choi, daughter of a powerful politician and the woman his father had been pressuring him to marry for months. Their families saw it as the perfect alliance, wealth and influence intertwined, ensuring control over Seoul's business and political landscapes. To everyone else, it was inevitable. To Jae-Min, it felt like a cage closing in. That as Minneseo guided him down the corridor, her perfume lingering in the air, Eun-Ji stood frozen, her hands gripping the stack of linens until her knuckles turned white. She forced herself to move, to continue her duties, but her chest burned with an ache she couldn't name. She reminded herself sternly, "You are a maid. He is a millionaire. There is no world where you belong together." But fate didn't let go so easily. Later that week, Jae-Min found himself standing at his office window, overlooking the Han River. Minneseo's words from their last dinner echoed in his ears. "You don't need to think about what you want, Jae-Min. This is bigger than us. Our families expect it." Her confidence infuriated him. It was as though his entire life had been decided without him. Yet every time he closed his eyes, he saw Eun-Ji's soaked figure in the rain, the strength in her voice when she answered him honestly, the way she carried dignity even inside her crumbling apartment building. That authenticity was something he had never encountered in his circles of wealth and manipulation. Meanwhile, Eun-Ji faced her own struggles. Her mother's health worsened, hospital bills piling higher than she could manage. She took extra shifts at the hotel, often working late into the night. Exhaustion weighed on her, but she endured, her brother's education and her mother's care driving her forward. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, she stepped into the staff locker room to find an envelope resting on the bench with her name scrawled on it. Inside was a card from management. "You've been selected to serve in the VIP lounge for the next 2 weeks." Her hands trembled. The VIP lounge was where the wealthiest guests dined, a place where mistakes could end a career. Her first night there, nerves tangled in her stomach as she carried trays of wine glasses across the room. And then she saw him, Jae-Min, seated with Manesio and a group of executives. He wore the same detached mask he always did in public, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes met Eun-Ji's, something flickered, an unspoken recognition. The moment was brief, broken by Manesio's sharp laugh. "Jae-Min, are you even listening?" she teased, touching his hand, a possessive lie. Eun-Ji quickly turned away, focusing on her duties. Yet later that evening, when the executives moved to the private bar, she found herself alone in the lounge, polishing glasses. She hadn't noticed him linger until his voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't push yourself so hard." Startled, she spun to see him standing by the window, city lights glowing behind him. "I'm just doing my job, sir," she said quietly. He stepped closer, his gaze searching hers. "Why don't you ever ask for help?" Her lips parted, but no words came. No one had ever asked her that, not sincerely. After a long pause, she whispered, "Because no one's ever offered." The vulnerability in her voice cut through him like a blade. He wanted to bridge the distance, to tell her she didn't have to carry everything alone. But before he could, footsteps echoed outside. Manesio's voice called for him, sharp and impatient. Their moment shattered. Jae-Min straightened, his face sliding back into the practiced indifference of a CEO. He brushed past Eun-Ji, leaving only the faint scent of his cologne behind. That night, Eun-Ji lay awake, torn between fear and longing. She knew the danger of even entertaining thoughts of him, yet she couldn't forget the softness in his eyes, the way his voice had dropped when speaking only to her across the city. Jae-Min poured himself another glass of whiskey, his father's call buzzing unanswered on his phone. For the first time in years, he admitted a truth he couldn't ignore. He envied Eun-Ji's freedom to feel, to dream, to be genuine even in hardship, and he found himself craving the very thing his world had stripped away. But the world was watching. Manesio was relentless, the press circled like vultures, and his father's expectations grew heavier with each passing day. Every step closer to Eun-Ji was a step further into scandal and ruin. Still, he couldn't stay away, and soon a choice would have to be made, one that could shatter both of their lives forever. The tension between Jae-Min and Eun-Ji grew like an invisible thread, pulling them closer no matter how hard they tried to resist. Every glance across a crowded room, every fleeting exchange in quiet hallways, only deepened the dangerous connection. Yet neither dared to speak of it aloud. For Jae-Min, the walls of his world closed in tighter each day. His father pressed harder about the impending engagement with Manesio, citing family honor and business survival. The Choi family wanted an answer soon, and Manesio herself became bolder, slipping her arm through his at every public appearance, as though marking her territory. He played his part, smiling for cameras, giving rehearsed answers, but inside, he felt hollow. Eun-Ji, meanwhile, tried to bury herself in routine, convincing herself that their encounters meant nothing. But her resolve cracked one evening when she overheard two executives gossiping near the staff corridor. "They say the engagement will be announced next month. Of course, Choi Manesio is perfect for him. A maid wouldn't even be worth a whisper." The words struck her like a slap. She forced herself to keep walking, her expression blank, though inside she felt a sharp ache. She had always known it was impossible, but hearing it spoken aloud made it unbearable. Her escape came in the form of her younger brother Ji. One Saturday, she saved enough to take him to the park near the Han River, a rare moment of respite. They laughed as he chased pigeons, his joy reminding her why she endured every hardship. Yet even there, the world found a way to intertwine. Jae-Min would have been jogging along the river, trying to clear his mind, when he saw them. He froze at the sight, Eun-Ji smiling, her brother clutching her hand. The simplicity of their happiness shining brighter than anything money could buy. When Ji-hoon tripped, scraping his knee, Jae-Min reacted instinctively. He rushed over, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket. Young-Jae's eyes widened in shock as he knelt beside the boy, dabbing gently at the cut. "You should be more careful," he told Ji-hoon softly, his stern tone softened by genuine concern. Ji-hoon sniffled, then looked up at him curiously. "Are you my sister's boss?" Young-Jae's face flushed. Ji-hoon, Jae-Min chuckled, surprising even himself, something like that. He glanced at Eun-Ji, their eyes locking in a moment that felt dangerously intimate. That evening, when Ji-hoon ran ahead to buy a snack from a nearby cart, Jae-Min turned to her. "You shouldn't carry everything alone, Eun-Ji. You deserve more than this." Her chest tightened. "More isn't for people like me, sir. My life is simple." "That's enough, is it?" His voice was low, almost pained. Before she could answer, Ji-hoon returned, and the moment slipped away. But Jae-Min couldn't let it go. In the days that followed, he found himself reaching out in small ways, anonymously covering part of her mother's hospital bill through the hotel's employee relief fund, arranging lighter shifts for her after noticing her exhaustion, ensuring Ji-hoon's tuition was quietly paid in full. He told himself it was charity, responsibility, nothing more. But the truth gnawed at him. It was because he cared. Eun-Ji noticed the changes but never knew their source. She worked harder, determined not to be seen as weak. yet her heart betrayed her, skipping whenever his gaze lingered, softening when his voice lowered in those rare, private moments. The breaking point came at another gala, this time at a glass tower overlooking Seoul's skyline. Eun-Ji had been ordered to serve in the VIP section again. She kept her head down, but her pulse quickened when she saw Jae-Min and Eun-Ji arrive together, cameras flashing. Hours later, as Eun-Ji carried a tray of champagne through the balcony doors, she stumbled upon Jae-Min standing alone, gazing out at the glittering city. Eun-Ji had gone inside to greet officials, leaving him momentarily free. Their eyes met, and the tension snapped. "You shouldn't be here," Eun-Ji whispered, her voice trembling. "Neither should you," he replied, stepping closer. His hand brushed against hers as he took a glass from the tray, lingering just long enough to send a shiver through her. "Someone will see. Let them." His voice carried both defiance and desperation. "I'm tired of pretending you." Her heart pounded. "You don't belong in my world, and I don't belong in yours." "Then maybe," he said, his gaze burning into hers, "we need to create a world of our own." For a moment, the city disappeared, leaving only the two of them on that balcony, hearts racing, teetering on the edge of something forbidden and inevitable. But just as the words left his mouth, the balcony door swung open. Eun-Ji's sharp voice cut through the air, calling his name. He stepped back instantly, masking his expression, while Eun-Ji lowered her gaze and slipped away before anyone could see the truth written in her eyes. That night, both of them lay awake, tormented by the same question. How long could they keep resisting a love that neither society nor family would ever allow? The days following the balcony encounter were unbearable for both of them. Eun-Ji threw herself into her work with a ferocity that left her co-workers worried, scrubbing and folding until her hands ached. She told herself over and over that she must forget him, that the fleeting spark they shared was dangerous, reckless, impossible. Yet each time she closed her eyes, she saw the intensity of his gaze, heard the words that still trembled in her chest. "Maybe we need to create a world of our own." Jae-Min, meanwhile, faced the suffocating grip of expectation more tightly than ever. His father arranged endless dinners with Eun-Ji and her family. Journalists followed his every move, and whispers of an engagement announcement filled the business circles of Seoul. But every time Eun-Ji's manicured hand curled around his arm, he felt the weight of a lie pressing down on him. His heart was elsewhere, in the quiet courage of a woman who scrubbed floors with her head held high. The storm finally broke one evening when Eun-Ji was asked to clean the executive suite. She entered quietly, carrying fresh linens, only to find Jae-Min already there, his jacket discarded on the sofa, his tie loosened. He looked up sharply when she stepped in, and for a long moment, neither spoke. "I'll come back later," she whispered, clutching the linens. "No," he said, rising to his feet. His voice carried urgency, as if afraid she might vanish forever. "Stay." Her heart pounded as he closed the distance between them. "This isn't right," she said softly. "If anyone finds out, I don't care." His voice cracked with raw emotion. "I've lived my whole life caring about what others think, what my father expects, what society demands. And yet, for the first time, I've found something real. Someone real." Her breath caught. "You don't know me, Jae-Min. Not truly." He stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Then let me, please." For a moment, she almost gave in, but fear surged, pulling her back. "You're a millionaire, heir to an empire. I'm just a maid struggling to keep my family alive. People like us don't end up together. They destroy each other." Silence hung heavy between them. He wanted to argue, to insist that money and status meant nothing, but before he could speak, a knock sounded at the door. Eun-Ji jumped, nearly dropping the linens. Jae-Min motioned for her to go, his face hardening into the cold mask he wore for the world. That night, Eun-Ji walked home with tears she couldn't explain burning in her eyes. Ji-hoon met her at the door, showing her a drawing he'd made of their family, just the two of them and their mother. His innocent smile was a reminder of the stakes. She couldn't afford to dream, not when survival was at risk. But fate wasn't done with them. The following week, Jae-Min's father announced at a press conference that the family was preparing for a major announcement concerning the Lee and Choi alliance. The media exploded with speculation, and Eun-Ji basked in the spotlight, already acting as though she were his fiancée. Eun-Ji heard the news from a co-worker in the staff cafeteria. The words pierced her like glass, though she forced a smile and pretended not to care. That night, she wept silently in her room, clutching the worn blanket that had comforted her since childhood. Jae-Min, however, made a decision. He could no longer stand by and let his life be dictated by power plays. He needed clarity, and he knew only one person could give it to him. He appeared at Eun-Ji's neighborhood late one night, his car far too polished for the narrow, dimly lit street. She froze when she saw him standing outside her building, dressed simply, no entourage, no mask of arrogance. "Why are you here?" she whispered, panicked. "If anyone sees, I don't care who sees," he said firmly. "I need to know. When you look at me, Eun-Ji, do you feel it too? Or am I imagining everything?" Her lips trembled, her heart warring with her mind. She wanted to lie, to push him away for both their sakes. But the truth burned too brightly. "Yes," she whispered, "I feel it, but that doesn't make it possible." He stepped closer, his voice breaking. Then let me make it possible. The sound of a neighbor's door opening forced them apart, and Eun-Ji hurried inside, leaving Jae-Min alone on the street, his chest aching with both hope and despair. Inside, Eun-Ji pressed her back against the door, tears spilling down her cheeks. She knew now that she couldn't deny it anymore. What terrified her most wasn't the impossibility of their love, it was how much she wanted it, despite knowing it could cost them everything. And outside, under the dim streetlight, Jae-Min swore to himself that he would no longer live by rules written by others. He would fight for her, no matter the scandal, no matter the cost. The days that followed were like walking on a razor's edge. Eun-Ji tried to retreat into invisibility, keeping her head down and avoiding the executive floors whenever possible. But the city had a way of tightening its grip, and rumors were already stirring within the hotel staff. Some whispered about seeing the CEO's car near her neighborhood. Others claimed they had noticed the way his eyes followed her. Every murmur felt like a threat, every sideways glance a reminder that her job and her family's survival hung by a thread. Jae-Min, on the other hand, had reached a breaking point. The upcoming engagement announcement loomed like a storm cloud. His father's voice was relentless. You will marry Millionaire. This is not about love, it's about power, stability, and our name. But for the first time, Jae-Min wasn't afraid of disappointing him. He was afraid of losing Eun-Ji forever. One evening, unable to bear the silence any longer, he sent for her. The request came through her supervisor, who relayed it with a frown. The CEO has asked to see you in his office. Don't embarrass the hotel. Her hands shook as she carried herself up to the top floor, the elevator ride stretching endlessly. When the doors opened, she found him waiting not in his usual tailored armor, but in shirt sleeves, his jacket draped carelessly over a chair. His eyes softened the moment they landed on her. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. She lowered her gaze. If this is about work, sir, you could have spoken to my supervisor. It's not about work. He crossed the room slowly, stopping just a step away. It's about us. Her breath caught. There is no us. You know that. Why? Because society says so. Because my father demands it. Eun-Ji, for once, I want to choose something for myself. His voice trembled, raw and unpolished. I want to choose you. Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to believe them, to let herself fall into the promise of what he was offering. But reality clawed at her. And what happens when the world finds out? When your father cuts you off? When people like Millionaire destroy me and my family just to remind us of our place? Jae-Min's jaw tightened. Then I'll protect you, whatever it takes. The conviction in his tone scared her more than his indifference ever had. She turned away, whispering, you don't understand what it means to live with nothing. You can't fight a battle that was never meant to be fair. But before he could answer, the office phone rang. He ignored it, his gaze fixed on her. But the knock on the door that followed couldn't be dismissed so easily. Millionaire swept in without waiting for permission, her eyes narrowing when she saw Eun-Ji. What is she doing here? Millionaire's voice dripped with disdain. Eun-Ji bowed, quickly, murmuring, excuse me, and tried to leave. But Millionaire blocked her path, her chin raised in superiority. I knew something was strange. All those nights you disappeared, all those excuses. Tell me, Jae-Min, is this your little distraction, a maid? Enough, Millionaire, Jae-Min said sharply, stepping between them. You have no right. I have every right, she snapped, her eyes flashing. Do you realize what this will do to you? To your family's name? To everything your father has built? Her words were daggers, but Jae-Min stood tall. Then let it all burn. I won't marry you. The silence that followed was deafening. Millionaire's face twisted with fury, and for a moment Eun-Ji thought she might strike her. Instead, Millionaire hissed, you'll regret this, and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Eun-Ji stood frozen, trembling. What have you done? She whispered. What I should have done a long time ago, Jae-Min replied, his voice steady. I chose you, Eun-Ji, no matter what happens next. Her eyes filled with tears, torn between fear and hope. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of the world pressed heavily on her shoulders, and when she finally spoke, her voice broke like glass. Then you don't understand what you've started. That night, as Eun-Ji walked home through the narrow streets of her neighborhood, she felt the world shift around her. The storm they had both tried to avoid was coming, fast and merciless. And in the shadows, Millionaire's vow echoed like a curse. You'll regret this. The fallout came swiftly. By morning, headlines blared across Seoul's newspapers and digital screens. Heir to Lee conglomerate rejects political alliance, and rumors of a Maid entanglement surface amid broken engagement. World turned upside down. Paparazzi lurked near the hotel, snapping pictures of every staff member. Co-workers avoided her, some out of fear, others out of jealousy. Her supervisor cornered her in the laundry room, hissing, do you realize what you've done? The hotel cannot afford this scandal. You should resign before you drag us all down. At home, her mother coughed weakly from her bed, worry etched into her frail face. Ji-hoon asked innocently why people with cameras were outside their building. Eun-Ji held him close, hiding her trembling hands. She wanted to shield them both, but she felt powerless against the storm. Meanwhile, Jae-Min faced a war within his own family. His father's fury erupted in the boardroom, his voice thundering. Do you realize what you've thrown away? Generations of legacy gone because of some maid. But Jae-Min stood firm, his jaw tight. I'd rather live honestly with nothing than inherit an empire built on lies. His father's hand slammed against the table. If you walk this path, you're no son of mine. For the first time, Jae-Min felt strangely free. Days turned into weeks, and the media frenzy refused to die. Eun-Ji tried to keep working, but the weight of scrutiny crushed her. Finally, she slipped away from the hotel quietly, her resignation letter left on the supervisor's desk. She thought disappearing was the only way to protect them both. When Jae-Min discovered she had left, he searched everywhere, calling hospitals, visiting neighborhoods, even sending his driver through the narrow streets of the city. He found her one rainy evening, standing alone at the bus stop, clutching a worn suitcase. Don't go, he said, breathless as he ran to her, her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. They'll never stop. Your world will destroy me and my family. Then let me fight for you, he pleaded, his voice breaking. I've lost everything else, Eun-Ji. Don't make me lose you too. She shook, her head, her heart torn. Love isn't enough. Yes, it is, he said fiercely, gripping her hand as if anchoring himself to her. It's the only thing that's real. You taught me that. Her resolve crumbled. In his eyes, she saw not the cold millionaire, but a man stripped of all masks, raw and desperate, willing to give up everything for her. And though fear still lingered, love finally outweighed it. They embraced under the rain, their lips meeting, in a kiss that silenced the chaos of the city around them. For the first time, neither cared who was watching. Months later, the headlines told a different story. Jae-Min, having broken free from his father's empire, started anew, investing in projects that supported underprivileged communities. Eun-Ji, no longer a maid, pursued her long-buried dream of studying design, her resilience blossoming into confidence. They lived modestly at first, in a small apartment overlooking the Han River. But it was theirs built not on wealth or status, but on love and sacrifice. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Jae-Min knelt before her on their tiny balcony, holding a simple gold ring. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with devotion. Eun-Ji Park, he whispered. You changed everything I thought I knew about love, about life, about myself. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded, laughter breaking through her sobs. Yes, Jae-Min, 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was met with the hum of the city, the glow of neon lights reflecting in the river. For once, Seoul didn't feel like a place of walls and divides. It felt like home. If you loved Jae-Min and Eun-Ji's journey, rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for more incredible tales of love against all odds. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching, and remember, true love isn't bound by status, but by the courage to choose each other, no matter the cost.